Gorkha earthquake devastated Nepal in 2015, reshaping the landscape and shattering lives. Ancient temples that had stood for centuries crumbled, and even Mount Everest, Earth's highest peak, was reshaped. Millions faced chaos as the disaster struck without warning. This particular seismic event proved uniquely destructive, distinguishing itself from previous earthquakes in the region.
Rise significantly as aid agencies managed to make their way.
What made the 2015 Nepal earthquake so catastrophic? How did its unprecedented impact unfold, catching an entire nation off guard? Nepal, a country nestled in the heart of the Himalayas, sits precariously atop a geological time bomb. For centuries, the Indian tectonic plate has been pushing northward, colliding with the Eurasian plate. This collision created the towering Himalayan mountain range and makes Nepal one of the most earthquake-prone regions on Earth. As the plates grind against each other, immense pressure builds up over time. It's a silent, invisible force that lurks beneath the feet of millions. The pressure has been accumulating for decades, if not centuries, and its release is inevitable. The question is not if, but when the Earth will violently unleash this pent-up energy. On April 25th, Kathmandu Valley bustled with its usual activity. Tourists explore UNESCO World Heritage sites, local vendors set up their shops, and children played in narrow streets. High above the Himalayas, climbers on Mount Everest prepared for another day of adventure. The population, while aware of the general risk, had no idea of the imminent danger. Many buildings in Kathmandu and surrounding areas were not constructed to withstand major earthquakes, leaving the region vulnerable to seismic events. As the clock ticked towards 11:56 a.m. Nepal Standard Time, the pressure beneath the Earth's surface reached a critical point. Miles below the village of Barpak, in the Gorkha district, approximately 80 kilometers northwest of Kathmandu, the rock along the fault line was about to give way. No one could have imagined that in mere seconds, their world would be turned upside down. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. At first, it was a gentle tremor, barely noticeable, but within seconds, the shaking intensified. The earth roared as centuries of built-up energy was released in one violent, catastrophic moment. The Gorkha earthquake had begun, and Nepal was about to face one of the most devastating natural disasters in its history. At 11:56 a.m. on April 25, 2015, a massive 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck Nepal. Its shallow depth of just 8.2 kilometers amplified the quake's destructive power, sending violent shockwaves across the country. The proximity to the surface turned cities into rubble and reshaped the landscape in seconds. In Kathmandu, ancient temples crumbled, and the iconic 9-story Dharma Tower collapsed, claiming at least 180 lives. One witness recounted, everything suddenly started shaking. What was really noticeable was everyone was out in the street and everyone was clearly very shaken.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the ground is shaking.
What about if the ground opens up?
Oh! Come on, Carson, hurry! Fuck!
The chaos spread beyond the capital. In the mountains, massive avalanches on Mount Everest claimed at least 22 climbers' lives, while hundreds more found themselves stranded at higher camps. Back in the villages, entire communities were buried by landslides, cutting them off from aid. One survivor from a rural area described the moment. "I was working in the field with my father when the earth began to shake. I thought that this world was going to be destroyed."
The frightening aftershocks continue today. Here's a look at where those have happened.
As the initial quake subsided, aftershocks continued to rock the country. Some were nearly as powerful as the main event, causing weakened buildings to collapse and forcing many to sleep in the open despite the risk of exposure. The constant tremors made rescue efforts treacherous, leaving many to face harsh elements alone. Kathmandu, once a vibrant city of ancient and modern structures, now resembled a war zone. Surrounding villages were flattened, with some completely wiped off the map. The Nepalese government, overwhelmed by the disaster, declared a state of emergency.
One of the first steps for rescue teams, making sure they can land. Following aftershocks that kept emergency workers from touching down at Nepal's main airport, help from across the globe has begun to roll in. And time is of the essence. Among the first teams to arrive was the 60-strong group of Chinese emergency workers.
International aid began pouring in, but faced significant challenges. Kathmandu's airport, the main lifeline for supplies and rescue teams, was congested and damaged. Roads to remote areas were blocked by landslides, leaving countless communities isolated and desperate for help.
London time, we believe something like 6,500 people are known to have been injured, and these are just the official figures.
As night fell on April 25th, the full extent of the catastrophe was still unfolding. Millions were displaced, thousands were injured or missing, and the death toll was climbing by the hour. The entire country lay in ruins, but the worst was far from over. The Gorkha earthquake had unleashed a chain of events that would test Nepal's resilience for years to come. The Gorkha earthquake left a trail of destruction beyond comprehension. Collapsed buildings dotted the landscape like fallen dominoes, while makeshift shelters sprouted up in any open space.
After the quake caused houses to collapse, others were too afraid to return home, fearing another earthquake or aftershock. India has ramped up its relief operations in quake-ravaged Nepal.
Over 3 million people suddenly found themselves homeless, with nearly half in urgent need of food and water. Refugee camps swelled with displaced families, their faces etched with shock and grief. For survivors, each day brought new challenges. Clean water became a precious commodity as treatment plants lay in ruins and pipelines ruptured. Food supplies dwindled rapidly, with remote villages cut off from aid convoys by treacherous landslides. In Kathmandu, hospitals overflowed with the injured, their corridors serving as impromptu treatment centers. Many medical facilities had sustained damage, further complicating efforts to treat the wounded. Powerful aftershocks continued to strike, forcing many to sleep in the open despite the risk of exposure. The psychological toll was immense, with survivors grappling not only with physical injuries, but also with the trauma of their ordeal. the scale of the disaster overwhelmed Nepal's emergency response capabilities. Rescue teams struggled to reach remote villages, their efforts hampered by blocked roads and limited resources. In many cases, local communities had to rely on their own strength and ingenuity to survive in the critical early days after the quake.
The temple collapsed during the earthquake. Reconstruction has been slow.
After 2 years, we expect more people to move out from temporary shelters as they rebuild their houses.
Local officials say 50% of reconstruction is complete.
As weeks turned into months, the distribution of reconstruction funds moved at a glacial pace. Only 12% had been allocated 2.5 years after the disaster, leaving millions to face prolonged suffering in temporary shelters as they waited for the means to rebuild their homes and lives. But as the years passed, signs of recovery began to appear. Homes were slowly rebuilt, stronger and more resilient than before. Children returned to newly constructed schools, their laughter a testament to the healing power of time and community. Even some of Nepal's treasured cultural sites rose again from the rubble, restored through painstaking effort and determination. The Gorkha earthquake had changed Nepal forever, but as the nation continued its long journey of recovery, one question lingered. Had this catastrophe taught the lessons needed to face future disasters? Only time would tell if Nepal and the world was truly ready for the next big shake. The Gorkha earthquake devastated Nepal, transforming its landscape and national psyche. In response, the country implemented crucial measures to enhance preparedness. New building codes aimed to create more resilient structures, while the National Reconstruction Authority coordinates recovery efforts. These steps represent a significant shift in Nepal's approach to disaster management. Despite these improvements, the threat of another major quake remains ever present. The Himalayan region continues to be a seismic hotspot, with experts predicting more large earthquakes in the coming decades. This sobering reality underscores the urgency of Nepal's ongoing efforts to bolster its defenses against nature's fury. As Nepal rebuilds, it draws on a combination of community-based programs and international support to strengthen its resilience. The country is racing against time, working tirelessly to apply the hard-earned lessons from Gorkha. With each passing day, Nepal becomes better equipped to face future seismic events, knowing that when the earth shakes again, the effectiveness of these measures will be put to the ultimate test.